Welcome to Scale Your Sales podcast, listed number 9 of 43 best podcasts for every sales professional. I am Janice B. Gordon, the customer growth expert, awarded RevTech strategist of 2024. Now, in this episode of Scale Your Sales podcast, my guest talks about consistency, coachability, and teamwork being the essential competencies, skills that he looks for when recruiting or in a team, coachability being one of the main ones. We also talked about active listening, and he shared some of his experiences as an active listener. I tell you what, we had so much fun on this podcast. We had a kind of running debate about him saying there's no such thing as the buyer's journey, just the buyer's experience through the seller's journey, and put up a really good argument. This person I'm definitely having on again because there is so much fun and so much for us to discuss. My next guest is the author of The Seller's Journey, teaching sales reps how to earn the right to ask questions, which questions to ask, and when. Welcome to Scale Your Sales podcast, Richard Harris.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Oh, well, me too. Having been on Surf and Sell, who knows where this conversation can go?
Totally, absolutely.
What I
you
do
roll
know,
it the way I like to roll it.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. What I do know, we'll probably have some fun doing it. So that's all good.
Great.
So the first thing I want to talk to you about is kind of like many of your successes along the way. You've been in this consultancy training of salespeople for a long time, like me. So,
Yeah.
What are you seeing that are the critical changes in sales teams that you think is having the kind of more impactful positive change on how we're going to go forward in our teams?
Yeah, and just for context, right? That we're doing this in September of 2024, and I'm sure by October of 2024 it'll change. The obvious piece obviously is the AI function, and it's not about top of the funnel stuff. It's really, to your title of how do you scale your sales and scale yourself, we can now scale faster. And I don't, again, I'll get into the weeds, but I don't necessarily mean, the spray and pray approach or better personalization or any of that other stuff that most people are talking about. What I'm talking about is the education side of it. We can now scale the sales education, the product knowledge education, the industry education so much faster. I think you probably talked to people and seen it too, is that I can now role play my cold calls or role play my demo or role play a negotiation with procurement with an AI bot, 25 times before I even have the conversation, which has not been possible, up until the last 6, maybe 12 months ago. Maybe 12 months ago that could even happen. So that's why I'm saying it can change by October. But it's the ability to educate that's really going to be the democratization of salespeople. And it's going to help us really weed out the good salespeople from the average or the poor salespeople. Or, and the flip side of that, the positive is that if you don't like to get on a bot and cold call and role play this stuff, well, the good news is you figured that out way sooner, and now you can go find something that does excite you a little bit more in life and about your career. So that's the biggest thing, is the education piece is the biggest piece, in my opinion.
Okay, so this is interesting. I'd like to get into what you said. If you find out early that you don't like being trained, a role playing with a bot and all of that, then you can go elsewhere and find another role. But if the once you've trained and you're in role, if your job isn't actually role playing with a bot, then surely actually you may be letting go of some really good people that will do it face to face, or that can do it online, but it's just that role playing environment.
Yeah, I hear that a little bit. The challenge is that if you really want to be in sales, the industry has changed, right? You either adapt or you die. Like we've all said that for the last 10 years. And so if you can't prove to me that you can role play with a bot 20 times and get better, I'm not going to put you on the phone, right? Because we also, think about it in the traditional way. Someone comes in, you give them product knowledge and industry knowledge, and you teach them some sales skills, and maybe you role play 2 or 3 times or 4 times in the conference room, and then you tell them to go hit the phones. Well, that's a colossal waste of resource, in my opinion. And there are definitely people who, quote unquote, don't test well, right? Like some kids don't do well on certain tests because it's too much pressure, it's too much this. We can only work with the information we have.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, if that's the case, then maybe this particular sales role isn't right for that person. Maybe that person does need more human to human coaching. Maybe they need that piece. And I think then at least you figured that out. Now, what I will say is the bot does not overtake training for the human. Even if I put someone into a bot or an AI tool to role play, as a leader and a manager, I still need to role play with them and add more of that human element and provide that human to human connection that all people need, right? And I think that's a really important piece. I'm glad you sort of called me out on that, is that you can't just use a bot, train your rep, train your team. You still gotta be a human and make sure the humanity is in there. So I appreciate you sort of calling that out a little.
Well, you know me.
That's good. Look, that's why we're here, right? Like you and I both know that we're pretty smart people, but we're not the smartest people, and we learn from each other. And
well, I tell you what, that's what I absolutely love the podcast. I go away at the end of the day, because I record back to back. I'm literally buzzing. I can't sleep. I've learned so much from all of my guests. It's just, it's like, oh gosh, I didn't know. I didn't think about it that way.
I have that problem, and then I try to write stuff down and try to remember it, and maybe write a post on it, and I'm just like, I forgot. I can't remember what.
Hey, Richard, use AI, right?
Exactly.
AI to summarize it. Come on now. Right. Okay.
Yeah, so but then I'm too lazy to go read the AI that was emailed to me, right?
You
it's not like I got to go look for it, right? I'm beyond help. Trust me, I'm way beyond help.
So then the other aspect in terms of, role playing with a bot and, all of the training and skills and product knowledge. In the process that I use and the research data that I've got from doing assessments for the last 30 years and all of the data, there's so much success that is linked to implicit skills, because we can teach someone the product knowledge, we can teach someone how to sell, but mindset, coachability, your relationship with money, how much will lead into whether you're a consultative seller, whether you're willing to challenge the customer, all of these implicit things that don't come through in an interview and won't necessarily come through in terms of transferring skills. To make sure you've got the right person in place, there's certain things that that kind of bot and role play won't be able to do that are essential to success. So what's your view in making sure that you do have the right people in order to put them through the training and the bot role playing?
Sort of in the interviewing process, you mean? Like, how do I try to figure out?
You've got to have the right people in the right seats to invest in them.
Yeah. So this is very interesting. I've taken several of these assessment tests, and I would not pass many of them for sales jobs, right? And it's interesting enough that I'm not smarter than the test. I'm smart enough to know that they're asking me an aggressive question to tell if I have that level of discipline or sort of that high D in a disc profile, right? Where you're sort of very positive and sort of energetic. And so I've taken many of these personality tests and they come back saying, well, you probably shouldn't be in leadership or management, or you shouldn't be in these things. But I think, so for me, to answer your question, I figured out to find people who are the opposite of me. I figured out that, and those people are very creative. They more so than I am. They see things in a more, I'm a linear bullet point person. I like to call them circular, where they sort of move in different ways versus sort of a straight line like me. And I learned a long time ago that one, a lot of times those people frustrate me in sales because they become, in my opinion, in my experience, high maintenance to me, not high maintenance people. Over time, I learned that I was wrong about this and that I needed to find a different type of person. So I'm very counterintuitive to what most people think about. Now, part of that is the same things I think, is like, well, tell me, you use storytelling, right? And you use it in a way to tell me about a time when you had a challenge. Tell me about a time when you had this. Tell me a time about how you got through a tough sale or a multi-threaded sale or any of these things, right? Like, so I learned those pieces to then interact with these other things. And then for one of my first companies where we did these tests, and we actually had someone like write us the 12 interview questions to ask. And based on these answers, we could tell how well they would fit into our sales environment, because not all tests indicate the right salesperson for that particular company, right? Like a transactional salesperson will have a slightly different mindset than, an enterprise salesperson. Not that one couldn't learn the other, but initially you'll notice different ways and they do things. Or, challenger sale, right? Like if you're hiring the lone wolf, that's a very different personality type than the team player. And the question is, do you want both of each? Do you only want team players? Do you only want lone wolves? So again, sorry, I'm so long-winded, but that's how I learned to find the right people, as opposed to what I am and how I am. So and I probably don't fit the mold. I know how to answer some of those questions enough so that I will fit the right high D personality for sales. So
Yeah.
I don't know that I would, if I had to go do it today, the questions are probably better. The tests are probably better than that. And I might get weeded out.
Yeah. Well, this isn't personality based, like the kind of disc profile, because the assumption is on whether it's Myers-Briggs, the assumption is if you're a high D direct person or you're extroverted, then you're going to be great at sales. We still have these kind of standard assumptions as to what a good salesperson looks like. So the kind of databases that I use have been going out for over 30 years. It's got so much data that you can now interrogate it. And for an industry, a sector, whatever part of the globe you're in, it's got so many, over kind of 2.6 million.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I think
it's the only sales specific test. And so what I love about it, when you're interrogating the data, you can find what's great looks like for your industry and bespoke it to your culture.
Yeah.
But the thing that you were saying was
I have a question, Jen. I have a question for you. So as we talk about personalities, right?
Yeah.
And I would say in the last 5 or 6 years, but maybe you've known this all this time. To your point, we've all been conditioned to think about the extroverted salesperson, when in fact, I've learned, and I now agree with, the introverted salesperson is very powerful. In my opinion, and what I've learned is that's because they're quieter and they listen better. Is just from your experience, not that one is necessarily better than the other, but we've overlooked the introverts, in my opinion. Am I right about that? Am I wrong about, like, what is your thought?
Absolutely. Do you know, I mean, this is when we think of Gong, when that first came out, they based the whole business on listening. And so from this data, it's told us that the active listening skill is 375% more impactful over and above any other skill as a sales success marker. 375%.
Yeah. Is that from the stuff you do, or is that
this is it's from the database? So when we're measuring success, if we're constantly so another stat is that in the world, the top 5% of the highest performing salespeople, of that 5%, I think it's about 70%, might be 68%, are introverts. So a high percentage of the top 5% of the top salespeople in the world are introverts.
This is one of those data points. This is one of those data points that I'm blown away by, but I'm going to forget as soon as we stop recording.
Don't worry, I'll give you. And then conversely, because there is so much data to interrogate over this, because once you've got 2 million assessments, and it's 462 data points, there's a lot of information, and it's going over 30 years, so you can see how the trend's changing. So the bottom 10%, bottom performing 10% of people in the world, they are more extrovert by 80%. I think it's like 86% are extroverts. So the bottom performers, more of them are extroverts. The top performers, more of them are introverted. So your sense of what you have experienced over the years of thinking, hang on a moment, we've got it wrong, the data is backing you up.
Supporting it. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I know I interrupted you to ask you
No.
question,
This is fine. It's just us having a conversation.
I know.
And we are both so excited to talk to one another. That's
I know. I'm bummed you don't live closer, because I'm sure if we got together, over dinner and a glass of wine, we'd
I don't think it
enjoy it.
I know.
Right, exactly. It'd be like, wait, what happened to the last 12 hours? It'd be fantastic. So
exactly. Okay. So what in your view is some of the key competencies that you look for? You've talked about it, your sense of what you've looked for, and what you look for now in terms of recruitment and the team. But in terms of some of the competencies that you think are essential, what would they be, your top 3?
Well, I think you mentioned one. Coachability is one. I'm also looking for someone who will push back in a professional way. Like, one of the interview questions I learned early, like my first management career, and it goes back to those figuring out the right kind of people. One of the questions we would ask is, hey, Janice, what would you do? And this is in a professional setting, not like some weird personal HR bullshit issue, right? What would you do if your boss told you to do something that wasn't right in relation to the sales? It's not right, but your boss is telling you to do it that way. And the answer can tell you lots of things. It's not that there's a perfect answer. The answer we were looking for at the organization was I would slow down and re-explain my position of why I think this idea is better versus the idea they're suggesting. And then even say, well, I'm a little confused because I still feel like it's this. What do you think is going to happen if we do it your way? So finding that, whereas a lot of times, a lot of people would say, well, I guess I'd do what my boss told me to do, right? So one is coachability. The other is the ability to have a professional disagreement, because what's really happening isn't whether or not they're going to do what the boss says. It's a question of how well they're going to handle objections, right? How are they going to slow down? I like to call it, you don't handle objections, right? Nobody wants to be handled, specifically my wife, who tells me regularly, right? So I always say you have to marinate in that objection. And so that's what we were trying to discover was their ability to take feedback that they disagreed with and how to maneuver through it. So it was coachability, the ability to stand up, And then I do want teamwork. I do want some level of team support. It doesn't mean that I'm still fine with the Maverick or, the lone wolf from Challenger being on the team. I have to be ready to manage that type of personality, but I still want teamwork. And so those for me are the three things that I'm looking for. So
Interesting.
is there, and now I'm going to flip it back to you. What are the three things people should be looking for? Or, hey, Richard, what do you think of this one? Because maybe there's something I just don't remember. So,
well, I mentioned active listening, and yeah, absolutely coachability. But what's interesting, you'll often find in the managers don't have that. That's what this data has told us. A lot.
You mean I'm not a good listener? Imagine that. I'm shocked. So I agree with you.
Often
By
managers.
the way, the first thing I train is active listening, and we do it with a Taylor Swift song.
Oh,
so
really?
When I have in front of the group, I make them listen to a song.
Yeah.
And then I ask them 12 questions of some very detailed questions in the song. And the whole purpose of the exercise and the training is to say, if you know this song by heart, that's fantastic. But when you go into a sales call, you don't know the song by heart. You know parts, industry knowledge, you might have some persona knowledge. So how well are you going to actively listen compared to a song where either you might know it or you don't know it at all? Yeah. Right. So I agree with you. I think I failed your question of what's the top three things. Active listening should be the top number one. You
didn't. There is no failure here. We just.
Oh, but I failed. I'm miserable. My day will not. It's only 8:30 and I've already failed for the day in California. So.
Let me test you on another one then. All right.
Yes, go for it. I love this. I love this. So much fun.
So you mentioned about understanding. There's no such thing as understanding the buyer's journey. It's the buyer's experience through the seller's journey. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, so I'm going to do a shameless plug. I wrote a book called The Seller's Journey that's on Amazon. It has a money back guarantee. If you hate it, I'll send you your money back in Venmo. If you're overseas, I'll send you cash in your currency, whatever it is. And part of the premise, there are two premises. One is we need to bring humanity back into sales, which goes back to what we were talking about in the coaching and the bot and the leader doing that piece. The other is that I really don't think there's much of a buyer's journey. I think there's a buyer's experience through a seller's journey. Janice has something that happens or she's hoping doesn't happen, meaning that's an experience. Therefore, Janices of the world go to Google to start to search for a solution, because we all do that, right? Unless you're our kids who go to TikTok to find a solution. And the moment you hit Google, it's about the experience. Right? Why do people SEO stuff? Why are they paying AdWords? Why are they testing? At that moment, they're no longer on a buyer's journey. They're looking for the best experience through a seller's journey. And so that's my premise, is that there is no such thing as a buyer's journey. It's an experience through the journey.
Oh, this is interesting.
And so some, anecdotal evidence is, for most people, how many apps do we have on our phone that we don't use? Why do I have 2 different weather apps? Well, one just has a crappy experience, right? How many times have we landed on a website and not filled out a form because something didn't feel right? I couldn't find what I was looking for. I didn't like the color of it. I don't know, right? If you'd have thought, in today's age, it's so funny how clean websites are, but we're all totally fine going to Amazon where everything's just yelling at us all day long, right? We've been conditioned for that. So that's what I mean by the experience versus the journey.
So is that the case in B2B? Because it sounds very B2C.
Oh, I think B2B always follows B2C, right? So because that's where it all starts, right? You and I, well, I'll speak for me. I've been selling since the 1900s. I've been selling since before the internet was the internet. And I remember the first year in the late 90s when they said, $500 million is going to be, sold on the internet for holidays around Christmas time and Hanukkah and, all the, want to make sure I get all the PC right holidays, right? $500 million, right? First year that's going to happen. Well, fast forward, people were like, I'm not putting my credit card in there, whatever. But now, sure, I'll go buy $3,000 of something on a website, right? Like my wife and I are remodeling the house. I can't tell you, it's my biggest bane is my wife always buys stuff because of how it looks. And I'm like, well, I want to know how comfortable the chair is. And we buy stuff all the time. We'll spend a lot of money on outdoor furniture with never seeing it or touching it, right? Which is a B2C experience. But now people will go online and buy stuff, thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, right? You could get Gong or Salesforce. You don't need to talk to someone all the time to buy stuff in a B2B world. So
Yeah.
I hope I answered your question. I might have.
Yeah, you did. So I'm going to challenge it somewhat in that, the buyer's journey in a B2B environment is very much about, we know it's got more challenging, more difficult. There's more decision makers around the table. And often a buyer may be buying something they've never purchased before. So it's a whole new experience, and they have to navigate their own internal processes, which we know post-pandemic has changed enormously. People that have got they're stakeholders, but they've got no skin in the game, but they're nevertheless around the table because they're there to reduce risk. Whatever the reason is, they have to navigate their own systems and processes and people and departments and politics. So they do have a buyer's journey. Now you as a seller have to be on that journey with them.
So I disagree.
Okay.
When you're so when you just said the magic word, which is navigate, which means they've got to create an experience for all the other buyers to get on board. That's not a buyer's journey. That's a buyer's experience. They have to go through an experience internally to get that stuff done. Now, this is the part that I also think is, it's gotten harder in some ways, but it's gotten way easier. Like, I don't buy into this myth that, well, the buyers are way smarter. Not really. Do you know who's smarter? The salespeople. How many buyers do you know take a class to learn how to buy? How many buyers do you know how to go look at the persona of their salesperson? How many buyers do you know role play the questions they want to ask over and over and over? They don't. Buyers are not self-educated in the same way we are. They are self-educated based on internal bias, internal confirmation bias of what they expect. And that's all about the experience. But we've been taught and been morphed to think that there's some journey. No, they're going through an experience. The journey they're going on, by the way, is the seller's journey. We create that. There's no reason in the world that you get off the phone, you get to the end of a call with your first prospect or client, first meeting, and if you're not saying this very specifically, hey, Janet, I know we're going to get off the call and you're going to go take this back to your team, right, and get their opinions on stuff, which I think you should do. Like, you got to make a great decision for your organization. Just out of curiosity, Janice, who's the most skeptical person on the team, and what are they skeptical about? That's a different experience for the buyer, because I'm not going to ask Janice, well, who's the decision maker? Whose budget is it coming from? It doesn't matter. I'm not getting to any of those people till I get through all the skeptics. So now I'm providing Janice with a different experience, and I'm helping her navigate that experience through the journey I know she's got to take. So now I'm leading her through her own internal journey. Oh, Janice says, well, it's going to be this person because they're in charge of security and IT, and they're always concerned about, SOC 2 compliance or this, or it's going to be the CFO and they're always concerned about ROI. Oh, well, Janice, you know what? Would it help if I send you this information now so you don't feel like a ping pong ball? I've totally changed this whole journey concept into an experience so that Janice goes, mind blown, this person actually is here to help me, not try to sell me.
Mm. You've
And seen.
I have to admit, you've made some really good points there. And,
Thank
you know, it's an interesting in that, you know, to think about how much according to my data, 77% of salespeople either shouldn't be in sales or in the wrong positions. We need to move them around to play to their strengths.
I just want to wait, 77%?
77%. This is based
on. Oh
on.
my God! You need to please write and publish this information.
Yeah,
this is
I've
mind-blowing.
done it. Where are you reading your material?
I don't know. I'm on LinkedIn. Where are you? I need to like put. I need to go get the thing that rings your bell so I know when you post.
Exactly.
I'm literally going to do that right now. By the way, people, if you don't know, when you find people you like, there's a little bell up in the corner of LinkedIn, and every time they write something, it'll tell you, it'll show up in your feed. So anyways, I'm going to go do that for you right now because I want to learn more of this stuff. So
so 77% of people should not be in sales, and I've completely lost my track now.
I changed your experience, didn't I?
You did, didn't you? Yeah, this is what you're up to, isn't it? You're changing it from a buyer's experience into a seller's experience. I'm the buyer, I'd have you know, Richard. Hey, Richard, do you know what?
Yes.
I'm going to have to get you on again because 1, it's too much fun, and 3, there's a whole load of other questions I want to ask you. This is such an interesting subject, but I think I need to go and research some more stats for you. Then, really, you know. Yeah,
exactly. No. By the way, I'll keep going for as long as you want, but I would love to come back and. I don't know. I think we should do something live. I think we should do a live webinar or something.
Yeah, like that. I think that would be. I'm having. Really I'll do it. The email is on its way. You're going to ring my bell.
Yeah.
And I'm going to email you about some lives. All right. So we'll do that.
Let's do it.
Okay. So, as if listeners do not already know, how can listeners get hold of you, Richard?
Yeah. So I'm super crazy. So. Go back and write this down or listen.
Got my pen.
+1 415 596 9149 415 596 9149. That is my legit real cell phone number. It's the one my children ignore when I ever call them from it. I have 2 teenagers, so if anybody can help me with 2 teenage boys, or you're looking to adopt, please let me know. That's my real cell phone number. Text me first. I got them on WhatsApp. Text me to say, hey, I heard you on Janice's podcast on Scale Your Sales. But that's one way. You can find me on LinkedIn, Richard Harris. I'm the one with the little trademark emoji. I know I can't trademark my name. And you can certainly find me at the Harris Consulting Group or the sellersjourney.com.
Excellent. Well,
sellersjourney.co, new website. Sorry.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure and lots of fun, but I knew it would be, Richard. Thank you so much for being a guest on Scale Your Sales podcast.
Oh, this is amazing, Janice. This is a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. So thank you for inviting me to be on. And if you want to hear us interview Janice, come check out the Surf and Sales podcast because my partner Scott Leese and I interviewed Janice and asked her some crazy fun questions and had a good time. So and it's very free flowing like this. So we go check her out as well.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Scale Your Sales podcast. If you like this discussion, feel free to listen to other episodes or watch the captioned show on YouTube and subscribe to future episodes. I would really appreciate it if you would leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you.